I came home from my brother's funeral to find my bedroom door locked with a padlock I had never seen before in my life. Not a regular lock, a padlock, the kind you put on a storage unit, on the door of the bedroom I had slept in for 31 years. I stood in the hallway and stared at it for a long moment. I thought maybe I was confused. Grief does that to you. I had just buried my younger brother 2 days before in Baton Rouge, driven 8 hours back to Tennessee alone, and I was running on about 4 hours of sleep and a gas station sandwich. I thought, maybe I have the wrong door. Maybe I'm not thinking straight. But no, the faded paint around the doorframe was the same. The small dent near the bottom from the time my daughter dragged a bicycle through the hall when she was 9. Still there. This was my room in my house, and someone had put a padlock on it. I set my bag down on the floor and walked to the kitchen. My son-in-law was sitting at the kitchen table eating a bowl of cereal. He looked up at me the way you look up at someone you were expecting but weren't particularly happy to see. "Hey," he said. Just that, "Hey." I pulled out a chair and sat down across from him. I was 63 years old. I had just buried my brother. I had been driving all day, and I was not in the mood for vague. "What's the padlock for?" I said. He set his spoon down. He folded his hands on the table like he was about to deliver a business proposal, and then he told me. His father was coming to stay with us. His father, a man named Boyd, who I had met exactly 4 times in 6 years, was apparently having some kind of situation with his living arrangements in Ohio. My son-in-law didn't go into a lot of detail, something about a lease ending, something about his stepmother moving out. He said it in that tone people use when they want you to fill in the blanks and not ask follow-up questions. "And he needs the master bedroom," I said. "It's bigger," my son-in-law said. "He's got some back issues. He needs the space." "That's my room," I said. "We figured you could take the guest room." I looked at him for a long moment. "You figured," I said. "It's only temporary," he said. "A few weeks, maybe a month." He picked up his spoon again like that settled it. "I want you to understand something. My name is on the deed of this house. I bought this property in 1989, the year my daughter was born, the year I was 32 years old and working 60 hours a week at the plant to make the down payment. I refinanced it in 2004 to cover a family emergency. I paid off the mortgage in 2019, 2 years before my wife Carolyn passed away. This house is mine. Not ours. Mine. My daughter and her husband had been living here for 4 years at that point. They moved in when their apartment lease ended during the pandemic. That was the story. Their lease ended. They couldn't find another place quickly. They needed somewhere to land for a few months. I said yes because she was my daughter, and that's what you do. 4 years later, they were still here. In 4 years, they had contributed exactly nothing toward utilities, groceries, or property taxes. I had not asked them to. That was my mistake, and I own that. When they moved in, I told myself it was temporary, and I kept telling myself that right up until the day I came home from Baton Rouge and found a padlock on my bedroom door. They were not struggling, by the way. My son-in-law worked in logistics for a regional trucking company, making around $70,000 a year. My daughter had recently been promoted at her marketing job. I knew because she had called me excited about it 3 months earlier. 2 incomes, no rent, no utilities. 4 years. I had done the math once out of curiosity, and then stopped because it made me feel sick. I got up from the kitchen table and walked down the hall to the guest room. My belongings were already in there, my clothes folded and stacked on the bed, my nightstand lamp, the framed photo of Carolyn and me from our 25th anniversary, my reading glasses, my medications. Someone had gone into my bedroom and packed up my things and moved them into the guest room without asking me, without telling me, without a single phone call during the 8 hours I was on the road. I sat down on the edge of the guest bed and I held that photo of Carolyn for a while. She would have had something to say about this. She would have said it calmly, in that way she had, where she didn't raise her voice but every word landed like a stone. She was better at this than me. I tend to go quiet when I'm upset, and then I stew on it for too long, and then I either explode or I swallow it and move on. I've been doing one or the other my whole life. This time, I did something different. I called my attorney in the morning. His name is Walt Greer, and I've known him for 20 years. I explained the situation. He asked me a few questions, then he asked me one question I wasn't expecting. "Do you want them out?" he said. "All 3 of them? Or just the father?" I didn't answer right away. "Let me think on that," I said. I spent that day in the guest room, which smelled like lavender because my daughter had put one of those plug-in air fresheners in there, the kind I specifically hate. I made a list, not an emotional list, not a grievance list, a practical list. What I knew, what I could prove, what I wanted. What I knew, my son-in-law's father was arriving in 2 days. What I could prove, I owned this house outright. No mortgage, no liens. What I wanted, for no one to ever move my things without my permission again. That evening, my daughter came home from work. She came to the guest room doorway and stood there for a moment, and I could tell she had been rehearsing something on the drive home. "Dad," she said, "I know this isn't ideal. You moved my things," I said. "We just thought. You moved my things without asking me, while I was driving home from burying my uncle." She was quiet for a second. She looked down. "It was his idea," she said softly, "and you went along with it." She didn't say anything to that. "How long has this been planned?" I said. "His father coming here." She hesitated. "A couple weeks. And you didn't mention it to me. We didn't want to stress you out with the funeral and everything." I looked at my daughter, this woman I had raised, this person I loved more than anything in this world, and I thought about all the things I could say. I thought about the 4 years of free housing. I thought about the property taxes I paid alone every January. I thought about the look on her husband's face when he said we figured, like this was a group decision about a shared space. "I need you to leave me alone tonight," I said. "I need to think." She left. I heard her and her husband talking in the kitchen for a while, their voices low. Then it got quiet. The next morning, I called Walt again. I told him what I wanted. What I wanted was for the father not to come. Not to this house. Not to my bedroom. Walt told me my rights clearly. The house was mine. No one had a legal right to invite a third party to take up residence without the property owner's consent. I had not been consulted. I had not agreed. I could have any non-resident removed from the property, and I had the right to establish whatever terms I chose for the people who were currently living there. He drafted a letter, a simple letter, stating that the property owner did not consent to any additional residence, and that any person arriving to take up residence would be subject to removal. He faxed a copy to me, and I held it in my hands that afternoon. When I heard a car pull into the driveway, it was a rental car. I watched from the window. My son-in-law's father was a heavy-set man with a gray goatee and a rolling suitcase. He moved slowly up the front walk. My son-in-law was already outside to greet him, shaking his hand, taking the suitcase. I opened the front door before they reached the porch. "I'm sorry," I said. "There's been a misunderstanding." My son-in-law's father stopped at the bottom of the porch steps. He looked confused. My son-in-law looked at me with an expression I can only describe as controlled panic. "Dad," he started. "I don't know what you were told," I said to the older man, and I kept my voice even because this was not his fault. He had been told something by his son and he'd packed his bag and flown here from Ohio. He didn't deserve my anger. "I don't know what arrangements my son-in-law described to you, but this is my home and I was not consulted about this. I can't have you stay here." The man looked at his son. My son-in-law started talking fast. He said I was confused. He said it was a family thing, that we could work it out, that his father had already made the trip. He said his father's back made it hard to travel, that it wasn't fair to send him back. "I'm sorry about your back," I said to the man, and I meant it. "But I'm going to need you to find other accommodations. I'll help cover a hotel for the first 2 nights if that helps." I handed him the card of the Marriott 15 minutes from the house. I keep a few in my wallet. Carolyn used to tease me about that. She said, I was always planning for situations that hadn't happened yet. She wasn't wrong. My son-in-law's father looked at the card. He looked at his son. Then he picked up his rolling suitcase and he walked back to the rental car. I have never seen a man so tired trying not to be the problem in a room full of other people's problems. I felt bad for him, but I felt clearer than I had felt in 4 years. My son-in-law waited until his father pulled out of the driveway, and then he turned to me, and whatever control he had been maintaining came apart. He told me I had humiliated him. He told me I had no idea what his father was going through. He told me I was selfish. I let him talk. When he was done, I said, "The padlock needs to come off my bedroom door by this evening." "You're serious," he said. "The padlock," I said. By this evening, I went back inside. My daughter was standing in the hallway. She had heard everything. "Dad," she said, "what is happening?" I'm going to need you and your husband to start looking for your own place, I said. I'm not asking you to leave today, but I am telling you that this arrangement is going to change, and I want you to be prepared for that. Her face did something complicated. I watched her go through a whole range of things: shock, hurt, anger, and then something that looked almost like guilt. We have nowhere to go, she said. You've had 4 years to prepare for this, I said. You both have good jobs. You can afford rent. You just haven't had to. That is so unfair. The padlock, I said again. By this evening, I went to my room, my real room, and I closed the door. The padlock came off that afternoon. I know because I checked. That evening was the quietest dinner I could remember in that house in years. My son-in-law didn't look at me. My daughter pushed food around her plate. I ate, cleared my dishes, and went to bed at 9 o'clock. I slept better than I had in months, maybe years. What happened over the next 2 weeks was not a war. I want to be clear about that. I didn't set out to destroy anyone. I didn't gloat. I didn't make speeches. I made a phone call to Walt and had him draft a formal housing agreement, the kind that should have existed 4 years ago. It outlined a monthly contribution toward utilities, a 6-month notice period if I needed the space back, basic maintenance responsibilities. Nothing outrageous. It was frankly generous. My son-in-law refused to sign it. He said it was insulting. He said I was treating them like tenants. He said they were family. I said yes, they were family, and family treated each other with honesty and respect, and an honest agreement was better than a dishonest arrangement that had already proven to have certain expectations I hadn't agreed to. He said he wasn't signing. I said that was his choice, and that without a signed agreement, I'd need them out within 60 days. Tennessee law. I knew it cold by then. My daughter cried. She called her aunt, my wife's sister, and I imagine that conversation was not flattering to me. She called her own sister, who lived in Denver and had been keeping out of it. I got a text from her that said, "Dad, what is going on?" And I called her back and explained the whole thing, start to finish, calmly. There was a long silence on the phone. Then my other daughter said, "He put a padlock on your bedroom door while you were at Uncle Ray's funeral?" "Yes," I said. Another silence. "I'll call her," she said. I don't know what that conversation was like. But 2 days later, my daughter came to me in the kitchen while her husband was at work. She poured herself a cup of coffee. She sat across from me. She looked older than she had 2 weeks before. "We've been treating you badly," she said. I didn't respond right away. I let it sit in the air. "I've been thinking about it," she said. "Not just the room thing, all of it. The 4 years. I think we got comfortable, and that wasn't fair to you. And I think I let him make decisions about your house that weren't his to make. And I'm sorry." I looked at my daughter. "I appreciate that," I said. "We're going to look for a place," she said. "We already started. There are some apartments in Murfreesboro that are reasonable." "That's a good area," I said. She wrapped her hands around her coffee mug. "Are you going to be okay here alone?" "I have been before," I said. She nodded slowly. "There is a thing that happens when you finally do the thing you should have done a long time ago. It doesn't feel like winning. It doesn't feel triumphant. It feels more like setting down something heavy that you didn't realize you'd been carrying, and then standing up straight and noticing that your back doesn't hurt anymore. That's what the next few weeks felt like." They moved out on a Saturday in March. I helped carry boxes. My son-in-law and I were not warm to each other, but we were civil. He shook my hand at the end of the day in that stiff way men shake hands when they're trying to end something without admitting they lost. I shook it back. My daughter hugged me at the door. She held on for a while. "Call me," I said. "I will," she said. "I do love you, Dad." "I know," I said. "I love you too." And I do. That never changed. Love doesn't require you to let people walk through you. I spent a long time confusing the two, thinking that loving someone meant absorbing whatever they needed without complaint, thinking that making things easier for my daughter was the same as being a good father. But a good father also shows his children what it looks like to have a spine, to know what's yours, to say, clearly and without apology, "This is my house, and I will not be moved out of my own bedroom by a padlock on a door. The guest room is a reading room now." I put a chair in there from the garage, one that used to be in my office at the plant before I retired. I put a lamp next to it, a good one, the kind that doesn't strain your eyes. I've got 3 books going at once, which Carolyn always thought was absurd. She was probably right, but she's not here to tell me so. And I get to have 3 books on the table, and no one is going to put a padlock on that room or move anything out of it without my permission. My son-in-law's father, as it turned out, moved into an assisted living facility near Columbus. My son-in-law mentioned it once, briefly, in the spring. I said I hoped the man was comfortable. I meant it. Some people think I was hard. Some people think I should have found a way to accommodate everyone, to smooth it over, to be the bigger person. I've had that conversation with myself many times. But here is what I come back to. I am 63 years old. I buried my brother. I buried my wife. I worked for 30 years to own something outright, something that is mine in a way that very few things in this life are allowed to be yours. And the moment I turned my back, someone put a padlock on my door. The bigger person showed up. He just showed up with a lawyer and a 60-day notice. My daughter calls every Sunday now. We talk for a while, about her job, about the apartment, about what she's cooking, about whatever's on my mind. Last week she asked if I wanted to come for dinner on Saturday. I said yes. I brought a bottle of wine and a pie from the bakery 2 streets over from her place. Her husband and I managed to sit at the same table for 3 hours without either of us saying anything we'd regret. It's a start. You don't always get the ending you wanted, but sometimes you get the one you earned. And sometimes, if you hold your ground long enough, you find out that the people you love are capable of more than you feared. I drove home that night with the windows down. It was April, and the air smelled like something new. I pulled into my driveway and sat there for a minute in the dark. My house. Mine. I got out of the car, walked to the front door, unlocked it with my key, the only one on that lock, and went inside.